resistance against this trade in human beings.
Well, I'm standing at one of the gateways between Central America and Mexico. I'm on the shores of the Suchiate River. On one side is Guatemala, and I'm on the Mexican side. And I'm looking out across as men and women are coming across on rafts made out of inflatable tires, and there are products moving contraband in the other direction. For barely $1.50, you can cross this river, evading the authorities who are just a few hundred meters further downstream. In fact, one man just simply saving himself that $1.50 and just wading straight through. For so many migrants, this is the start of what is an increasingly dangerous journey north to the United States in search of a better life. El Camino pal Norte, as they call it in Spanish.
Migrants are still invisible here in Mexico.
They believe in God because of their experiences. They'll often say, if it hadn't been for God, I'd have died, then and there.
I do everything I can, because I got my children over there. I got my 4 children. I got my wife that I love my wife. And I got deported like 2 months ago, and I'm trying to go back with them,
If Mexican authorities are not investigating the disappearances of their own citizens, you can only imagine how bad the treatment is for Central Americans.
For migrants from Mexico and Central America, the journey north is beset with danger. From the moment they cross the Suchiate River, most say they simply put their lives in the hands of God. They are subject to extreme hardship, hunger, thirst and fatigue. They must endure tropical rainstorms and then walk for days through desert heat. But beyond the physical challenges, they also face the most brutal elements of Mexico's violent drug war. Extortion and abuses of power by the authorities, assault, rape, kidnapping and murder by the drug cartels. There is often collusion between the two, and all of it committed with almost complete impunity. These are the invisible masses, the flows of people looking for a brighter future, to whom the Mexican state and their own governments have failed to offer meaningful support for decades. Yet despite the suffering they endure, perhaps because of it, I found out as I travelled along part of their journey that their faith in God seems to strengthen on the road north. I'm Will Grant, the BBC's Mexico and Central America correspondent, and in this 2-part special for Heart and Soul on the BBC World Service, I'll be meeting some of those migrants as they make their trip. We'll ask them how their faith has evolved as they get closer to their final destination, and look at how a handful of pioneering priests have defied the authorities, the Vatican, and even the drug cartels to offer these men and women a little respite and human dignity along the way. For tens of thousands of people every year, the principal route north is by freight train through the jungles of southern Mexico to the deserts in the north. Commonly called La Bestia, meaning the beast, migrants from Guatemala, Honduras and El Salvador travel on the roofs of the carriages, hoping to avoid detection from the authorities and attacks by the drug gangs. The stories of travelling on La Bestia are notorious. Every year, thousands of people barely make it a few hundred kilometres before their journey is abruptly cut short, either through deportation, kidnapping, or in some cases, gruesome accidents. For Elvira Lopez, the train changed her life irreparably. A 22-year-old widow, Elvira left her 3-year-old daughter back in Guatemala as she attempted to reach the United States to find work. But she was one of the first to fall by the wayside. She lost a leg after falling from the train, a common occurrence on La Bestia. Still coming to terms with spending the rest of her life on crutches, she is withdrawn and has an old face for a young woman. Little wonder when she told us her harrowing story in a small chapel in Chiapas.
When we reached Yucatan, I fell off the train. We were sitting on the roofs of the wagons. Unfortunately, I was very sleepy and didn't see the branches. I hit one and fell to the ground. Then I got sucked beneath the train and was dragged along. I thought I would die right there and leave my daughter without a father or mother. So I begged God, and he left me in the middle of the tracks while the train rode on above me. I just closed my eyes and kept as still as I could. But the pain, the terrible pain which no one could help me with, that I had to endure alone. Finally, the train passed over me, and I saw the stars. And I gave thanks to God that this terrible thing that had happened to me was over.
Esa cosa terrible para mí, bastante terrible.
A taxi driver eventually came to Elvira's aid and phoned the paramedics. What remained of her shattered right leg was amputated, and she ended up at the Refuge of Jesus the Good Shepherd in the rugged border town of Tapachula, which specializes in attending to people who have lost limbs on La Bestia.
Mi nombre es Olga Sánchez Martínez, fundadora del albergue Jesús el Buen Pastor del Pobre y del Migrante.
Olga Sanchez, affectionately known as Doña Olga, set up the hostel more than 20 years ago. On being told she only had months to live from an intestinal disease, Doña Olga pleaded with God to spare her life. When she later recovered, she made good on a promise she'd made at her most desperate hour.
Yo ya había ofrecido esta vida que sirviera de algo que fuera útil.
I'd offered up my life to be useful and for God to lead me wherever he saw fit, and he brought me to the sick. I first visited the hospital here in Tapachula, and I saw there was a great need for someone to help these people who were without arms, legs, losing blood. In those days we had a very small hospital and everyone was living together, men and women. So though I'd never done anything like this before, I came up to them and asked, "Where are you from? What do you need?" "Medicine and clothes. We've arrived here with nothing. They stole everything we had." So I just said, "I'll get you medicine and clothes, don't worry."
Yo voy a conseguir medicina y no te preocupes.
After her own savings ran out, Doña Olga resorted to begging on the streets of Tapachula to get the basic supplies the amputees needed. When we arrived in the home, there were about a dozen people recovering from their accidents on La Bestia. Doña Olga says the home is meant as an example to the injured migrants who, like Elvira Lopez, arrived at their lowest ebb, so they too might find a reason to continue with their lives.
Yo aquí me siento bastante feliz, contenta.
I feel much happier and content. Thanks to God, I've been through the hardest part. Now I'm coming out of this problem, and I feel much better. I feel braver and ready to fight again and move forward. The harder the blow, the harder you have to become. You need a heart of oak.
Yo siempre les digo, el dolor es una invitación para que tu fe crezca.
I always tell them that pain is an invitation for your faith to grow. Suffering is an invitation to greater faith. They often arrive without faith or without knowing God. But it's at this point, when we think we want to die, that we see there's a God and that he can help us. And that's where a powerful faith is born. This girl here, Elvira, arrived with us so disillusioned and downtrodden. But I said to her, "No, today you have something you've never had before, your faith." This hostel, I tell them, is built on faith. I never imagined building a place like this without a single peso, by begging on the streets. Just imagine. And today you can see what it's become. I tell them, faith can move mountains, and it's made this home for you, for me, for all of us.
Sí, para mí, para todos.
For many Central American immigrants, the first stop along the way after they cross the southern border with Mexico is here, the station at Ixtepec in the state of Oaxaca. In fact, as I look around the station, there are a number of presumably Central American immigrants sitting on the side of the rail tracks waiting for the next train, which is rumoured to be leaving sometime this evening. Many of them will be travelling with a coyote, somebody they have paid perhaps thousands of dollars for safe passage to the United States. Others will be travelling either on their own or maybe in small groups of friends or close family.
One of the new patterns that we've seen in abuses against migrants is that they're kidnapped by the same people that they've paid to transport them across the border. And they're kidnapped so that their relatives in the U.S. can be extorted for money.
Nick Steinberg is the Mexico and Central America expert for Human Rights Watch.
Unfortunately, the pattern that we've seen across Mexico is that rather than investigating and assisting the migrants that come forward to denounce abuses and the human rights defenders that they work with, they actually are persecuted and they're threatened. And that goes to one of the biggest problems that we see today in Mexico.
Either way, many of them will have heard by word of mouth of a refuge a few hundred meters down the tracks called Hermanos en el Camino, Brothers on the Road. And there they will find a very unconventional Roman Catholic priest. Padre Alejandro Solainde is not your average parish pastor. His small stature and the simple wooden cross around his neck belie a fearlessness which has seen him take on some of the biggest powers in Mexico. His outspoken stance on the mistreatment of migrants has put him at odds with the Mexican government, the Vatican, and the country's ruthless drug cartels. Indeed, his Sunday sermon at the hostel he set up 6 years ago combines words of support to the migrants in his congregation with a scathing attack on the people who have abused them along the road. Such an approach has earned him death threats from the criminal organisation Los Zetas, among others, and now Padre Solainde is accompanied by armed guards around the clock.
El caso de los cárteles, sobre todo los Zetas, ¿verdad?
Of the drug cartels, it's mainly Los Zetas who are the most cruel and bloodthirsty. Los Zetas, the cartel of Los Zetas, is the most voracious at making money from the inhumane treatment of migrants, but the other gangs do the same. They see these people as a commodity, and obviously that's created a conflict against us, and against me in particular. Why? Because they say, this is our merchandise, don't get involved, it's my business. And I tell them that's not true. These aren't your commodities. They're children of God. Their only master is God. And they aren't anyone's merchandise. They're people with rights and you must respect them. So when they kidnap people, I report them and bring criminal charges against them. Even though nothing is done, I still denounce them.
Aunque no se haga justicia, pero yo lo tengo que hacer.
Are you ever afraid for yourself or for the immigrants who come here that you'll be specifically targeted, given how outspoken you are about these things, and given that the fact that you're actually taking legal steps against some of these groups?
No tengo miedo.
I'm not scared. I'm not scared because I'm a man of faith. My life isn't in the hands of Los Zetas, nor in the hands of the Mexican politicians or any drug cartel. My life is in the hands of God.
De ningún cártel. Mi vida está en manos de Dios.
Would it not have been more simple to simply be a parish priest, to look after the group of parishioners and the congregation that you had in the state of Oaxaca or wherever it was that you ended up working, and simply look after that group of people rather than trying to take on something so extensive like Central American immigration?
Es que para entender lo que es la migración,
in order to truly understand what migration is, you have to go deeper. The migrants aren't a question of aid. At first glance, it seems like I could have opened up a soup kitchen in my parish, give maybe 1,000 people a meal, and leave it at that. But it's not so easy. We have to examine the root causes of migration. We have to look at the poverty and the inequality in their countries of origin and ask what's happening there. We also must question what's happening in Mexico and the United States.
¿Y qué está pasando en México y qué está pasando en Estados Unidos?
If any further indication was needed of the power of Los Zetas cartel, in just the past few days, its head, Miguel Ángel Treviño Morales, was captured with $2 million in cash and 8 guns near the US border. He is wanted for, among other crimes, the murder of 265 Central American immigrants in San Fernando in the northern state of Tamaulipas in 2 separate massacres. As the migrants gather in the dining hall for a hot meal, some of them are accompanied on their trip by their children. Padre Solainde argues that a capitalist system in which money has become God is the reason people would even consider subjecting their children to the ordeal on the train. But although the migrants arrive at his door, often beaten, frightened, and with almost no material possessions, Padre Solainde says he is constantly amazed at the strength of their faith.
Si algo tienen claro los migrantes es su gran fe.
If the migrants have one thing clear, it's their great faith. I don't look at their religion. They follow many religions. I don't look at that. Here they are all welcome, no matter what. But they have taught me, a priest, they have taught me that there is a God of everyone, for everyone, who travels with everyone. They consider there is a God that is Father to us all, who attends everyone. It's a God that goes beyond the manipulations of any ecclesiastical institution trying to use him for their own ends. No, they have shown that a God exists that travels with them and looks after them on the road. A God who, strangely enough, they don't blame, despite all the hardships they've endured.
De todas las desgracias que va pasando en el camino.
Padre Solainde's advocacy for migrant rights has repeatedly put him at odds with the traditional Catholic Church in Mexico. But he sees no contradiction in being a priest and criticizing the church hierarchy for failing to act or speak out about the corruption and impunity of the drug war in Mexico. Indeed, for him, it is the only true calling for a Mexican priest.
Si la Iglesia Católica quiere seguir a los migrantes, tiene que meterse y subirse en el tren.
If the Catholic Church wants to keep up with the migrants, it has to get on the train, it has to walk with them, it has to learn the spirituality of the road, not just from the safe confines of the chapel. It has to learn what it means to be at risk. It has to listen to the migrant and carefully look at God's will, not live within this kind of stable, rigid institution.
Una institución estable, asentada.
People who spend any time around Padre Solainde are always impressed at his sheer dedication to a dangerous cause and the unflinching nature of his logic. We were no different. He comes across as a man who knows that fighting this issue in a little-known corner of Mexico might cost him his life. But that and his unwavering faith only seem to spur him on. With that, the Bestia has arrived, this huge freight train in Ixtapec. Now the migrants, who I can see between the tracks, stepping out from between the freight trucks with very, very few possessions on them, just their baseball caps, a rucksack each, and I'm looking at a few men now sorting out their soaking blankets. They're absolutely drenched through to the skin. Many will be heading down the way to Padre Solainde, and now others are going to try and get on this train when it moves off later. Volunteers at migrant centres such as Hermanos en el Camino say they have seen a noticeable increase in the number of migrants from India, China and East Africa, as well as the constant flow of people from Central America. Some, however, abandon the idea of reaching the United States once they have experienced the dangers of the train.
I'm Wilson Chalmaciel. I'm from Haiti.
Wilson, how did you come to be in this part of Mexico, in Oaxaca?
And my destiny is not USA, but I just are looking for a better place, better than Haiti. Maybe if Mexico is not the place, after I will move.
So you're not necessarily trying to get to the US, you're just trying to get out of the situation that exists in Haiti.
Yeah, exactly. So right now maybe I will stay in Mexico because I want to study, and so in August I will go into the university in Mexico. Maybe I will stay 4-5 years along, I don't know.
What has Padre Solinde and the Hermanos en el Camino offered you? How have they been able to help you while you're here?
Okay, when I've been in Mexico, I don't have visa. Okay, so I have some trouble with migration. The first day when I come in Mexico, the migration keep me.
They arrested you?
They arrested me for 4 months. Okay, I was 4 months long at the migration station, and after I found Father Solalinde, and he helped me to go outside this place.
So he's given you support to get settled, to get your papers together so that you can study and you can get a life in Mexico together.
Father Solalinde, he's helped me in everything. So first he helped me to go outside the migration session, but now he helped me to get my Mexican residence, and he paid for me my the university. He said, okay, you wanna study? I will help you to study, and he helped me now for start my university.
For the country's drug cartels, migrants like Wilson are an important source of income. They kidnap and extort them throughout their journey, and they force them to pay for passage across the Rio Grande. As such, each migrant who either abandons the trip or makes it to the US on their own represents thousands of dollars in lost revenue to the gangs. But as Padre Solalinde explains, in some cases the line between the drug cartels and the authorities is becoming ever more blurred.
La bestia no es el tren, sino...
La bestia, the beast, isn't the train. Rather, it's the bestial attitudes of those who use the train in a bad way. For example, there are kidnappers who reach agreement with the train drivers. The train drivers have been very perverse and corrupt, and they have stopped the train, sometimes even moved it back down the tracks, so the kidnapped gangs can attack the migrants. They stop at pre-arranged locations. They've also made pacts with the federal police, not once, but many times, so they can board the train and attack the migrants. There are also gang members who say, give me the money or I'll throw you from the train, and they have thrown people from a moving train. So it's not the train itself, it's the form in which they have used it as a weapon, both the gangs and the National Institute of Migration. They have turned the train into a beast, la bestia.
Y entonces sí han convertido el tren en una bestia.
The BBC requested an interview with the Mexican Interior Ministry and the country's migration authorities to discuss Padre Solalindé's accusations. However, despite repeated attempts, we weren't granted one. Once they reached the hostel, the men and women on the Bestia were given food and drink, as well as a place to take a shower and wash their sodden clothes. Among them was Jeff. He is one of many migrants who spent so much of their lives in the United States before being deported that he considers he's basically trying to get home. So you just, where have you just travelled up from?
From Honduras, trying to go back to Seattle, Washington, you know. So I got my family, I just got deported like 2 months ago, you know. We came from Guatemala. It's not easy for us, you know. The people try to drop us, try to kill us, you know. I don't know, man. I don't know what to say, you know.
What was the journey like on the train? I mean, you were travelling on La Bestia. What was the experience like on the train?
I mean, this is my first time, you know. But I see a lot of stuff over there in La Bestia, you know. People that fall, you know what I'm saying? They think it's not easy, you know. They come with kids, women, young people, you know what I'm saying, men. I mean, there's women last night, you know. I think they're gonna die, you know what I'm saying? I'm still wet, you know, my clothes still wet and everything, you know. But I'm here.
And you said people tried to extort you, murder you, attack you. What happened?
Yeah, it was over there back in Guatemala, you know. People, you know, said try to wrap your money. You know, police. Yeah.
Pretty complicated, dangerous journey, right?
Yes, sir. It's very dangerous.
But it's still worth making the journey, you think?
Yeah. To get back to Seattle. I do everything I can, you know, because I got my children over there. I got my 4 children. I got my daughter, my 3 sons. I got my wife that I love, my wife. And I got deported like 2 months ago, and I'm trying to go back with them, you know.
From Ixtepec in the verdant state of Oaxaca, Jeff has a long way to go until the rains of Seattle. But he and his travelling companions will at least get a little respite under the protection of Padre Alejandro Solalinde until they feel ready to get back on the Bestia North. Buena suerte, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Ciao. when you see the migrants offer, you say goodbye to a migrant, you say buena suerte or good luck. It's the normal blasé thing that you would say to someone at the end of a brief meeting, but in this case they really, really do need it. The journey ahead is fraught with danger, fraught with violence, extortion, rape, murder. They really, really do need good luck.
As we left Ixtepec to travel further north ourselves, it was clear that many of the Central American migrants